everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a review on the Too Faced Born This Way Sunset Stripped Eyeshadow Palette. If you do want to see a review and a demo, then please keep watching. As a huge favor, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment anything down below. I greatly appreciate it. I read all the comments and I will do my best to reply back. This palette retails for $52 at Sephora, Ulta Beauty, and Too Faced online. I do want to read a little bit about this palette on Ulta's website. That's where I purchased it. The Too Faced Born This Way Sunset Stripped is a 16 rich, creamy, highly pigmented, modern nudes range from flattering to sultry matte, metallic shimmer, and sparkle shades for looks so naturally alluring they'll think you're born in LA. Here's a closer look on what the packaging looks like. It says Too Faced Born This Way Sunset Stripped. Up at the top you have the shade names. On the side of the packaging there isn't anything. On the back of the palette you have a little description, the ingredients. On the bottom right next to the barcode it does state that this palette was made in Italy. Let's open this up. Here's what the actual eyeshadow palette looks like. It does match the packaging. And then here's what the back looks like. It has a picture of palm trees. Let's open this up. Here's what all 16 shadows look like, and it does come with a mirror. The first shade in the palette is called High Tide. High Tide is described as a warm taupe matte. Let's blend this out a little bit. It blended out into nothing. I have a little bit more on my fingertip. There we go, that's much better. The bottom shade is called Shall We Dance. Super cute name. Very soft in the pan. Here's what that shadow looks like. Shall We Dance is described as a warm, light pink shimmer. It does have that shimmery iridescence, but it is very light. I'm gonna see if it's buildable. That's a little bit better. Swatching the first two shadows, I'm kind of underwhelmed by the quality of this palette. Normally Too Faced's eyeshadow palettes are very pigmented, but this is kind of subpar. Let's continue swatching. The next shade in the palette is called Sun's Out. Sun's Out is described as a light beige gold metallic. That's really pretty. This shade I don't need to layer up, it is quite pigmented. Below that we have the shade in Nude Beach. Nude Beach is described as a neutral beige matte. Again, that matte shadow kind of disappeared, so I'm gonna see if we can build it up. It's there, but it barely shows up. We have another matte shadow in Sun Chaser. This is kind of similar to the previous shade that we swatched. Here's what that looks like. Sun Chaser is described as a medium warm brown matte. This shade is a little bit deeper than the previous shade, which is good. Let's blend it out. Here's what Sun Chaser looks like. Really beautiful shade. At least we can see this shadow. The next shade is called Surfboard. Surfboard is described as a golden peach metallic. I'm gonna apply another layer and then I'm gonna blend it out. Much better. The next shade is called Shell Yeah. Shell Yeah is described as a light peach with pink shimmer. Again, I'm gonna build it up because it is a little bit faint. There we go, that's much better. Right underneath Shell Yeah, we have Butter Pecan. Butter Pecan is described as a light milky orange matte. Again, I'm gonna apply another layer. There we go. The next shade is called Golden Hour. Golden Hour is described as a rose terracotta matte. Again, I'm gonna build it up once more. Right underneath that, we have the shade in Hey Honey. Hey Honey is described as a true bronze metallic. This shadow is very pigmented. This is what I expected from the shimmers. The next shade is called So So Hot. So So Hot is described as a medium ruby metallic. Wow, that's beautiful. And again, very pigmented. Same thing, I expected the shimmer shadows to stand out versus what they look like up here. They look a little bit muted. Right underneath that, we have the shadow in Chai Times. Chai Times is described as a deep cranberry matte. Again, super pigmented. It's a little bit patchy as I blended it out. I'm gonna apply a second layer. Let's see what it looks like. It could be better, but it's a beautiful shade. Next up, we have Cocoa Glow. Cocoa Glow is described as a dark, warm brown matte. I don't like how the darker shadows are blending out. It seems to be a little bit patchy. Next up, we have Bonfire Babes. Bonfire Babes is described as a deep bronze metallic. Again, that's really beautiful. So far, I'm liking the darker metallic shadows. The second to last shade is called Sandy Cheeks. Sandy Cheeks is described as a brown olive shimmer. Which you can barely see, so again, I'm going to build it up. Again, you can barely see that shade, but you can see the shimmer reflect. The last shade in the palette is called Black Sand. Black Sand is described as a soft matte black. Super pigmented. Again, a little bit patchy. Here's what all 16 shades look like swatched on the back of my hand. Now we're gonna create a look using this palette. Taking a fluffy crease brush, I'm gonna dip into the shadow in Sun Chaser, applying the shadow in my crease, going back and forth, doing windshield wiper motions. That shadow blended out very easily. Using that same brush, I'm gonna apply the shadow in Golden Hour, going right below that first shadow, again going back and forth, doing windshield wiper motions. We're gonna soften out that first shadow that we used in Sun Chaser. I like how the mattes are blending in with each other. Swapping my brush for a flat brush, I'm gonna dip into the shadow in Sandy Cheeks. I wanna see if this shade will show up on my eyelid. Packing the shadow all over the lid. Oh wow, it does show up, it's beautiful. Going back in with the first brush we used, I'm gonna tap into the shadow in Golden Hour. I feel like we lost a little bit of that mauve-y shadow. I'm just gonna go back and forth, kind of soften it out a bit. I love how the eye look came out. I'm gonna do the other eye really quickly. I do want to apply a little bit of the shade in Shell Yeah using a pointed pencil brush. I'm going to apply this in my inner corner. Here's how the eye look turned out. For mascara, I'm going to apply the Essence Lash Princess False Effect Mascara. For lips, I'm going to apply the shade in Drive-In Movie from R.EM Beauty. Here's what everything looks like. My final thoughts on this eyeshadow palette is that I like it. I'm not completely obsessed with it. I like the first palette they released, the Natural Nudes palette. I no longer have that palette. I decluttered it, but I'll pop a picture right over here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. That retails for $49. I'm not sure why this is $52 on Ulta's website and Sephora and Too Faced online. That palette was super pigmented. I didn't have to dip back in like I did with this palette. I reviewed that eyeshadow palette when it first came out. If you're interested, I'll leave it in the cards. This palette fell short for me. I don't like how it blended out on the back of my hand. I did have to apply a second layer just to build up the pigmentation, especially with the matte shades. Whereas with the other palette, I didn't have to go in as much. I loved how the two matte shadows blended in with one another. There wasn't any patchiness. The shade in Sandy Cheeks I thought honestly was not going to show up on my eyelids, but it turned out beautifully, which surprised me. But overall, I would skip this palette. I don't think it's worth the $52. If you guys have this eyeshadow palette in your collection, please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you guys did enjoy this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I will see you guys in my next video.